Good morning, everybody. Sorry about the technical difficulties we've been having. We're trying something new, so we keep on exploring new technology on how to do this. So bear with us. But good morning, everybody, and welcome to our next session of Caltrans Bay Area Thinking Equity series. Today's theme is how can we foster equity in our projects? Today's panel discussion will address questions from D4 staff and employees. To share more about today's format, please welcome next Mika Wagoner.
Thank you, Dina. Good morning. Today's conversation is via our District 4 YouTube live channel. Please use Google Chrome. The link is on the flyer. You will be able to post comments and questions to the YouTube chat and to the Ask Tony email. For today, we have prepared questions and comments submitted to the Ask Tony email and from our September 21st conversation. If time allows, we will answer questions submitted today. All questions submitted that are not answered will be collected for a future response. Today's panelists joining us to discuss how we can foster equity in our projects are our Chief Deputy Director, Dina El Tawanzi, Dewan Nguyen, our Deputy of Program and Project Management, Melanie Brent, our Deputy of Environmental Planning and Engineering, Jean
Thank you, Mika. Good morning, Caltrans Bay Area team. It is an honor to be here with you this morning, and thank you for being here with us. It's also an honor to be sharing this stage and this platform with our Chief Deputy Director, Dina El Tawanzi, and Deputy Directors, Jean Finney, Melanie Brent, and Dewan Nguyen. Thank you to them for joining us on this panel discussion this morning. This is our third series, as Dina mentioned, in our equity discussion. And as has been mentioned previously, equity is a relatively new topic within Caltrans for us. And so we're learning every day. We're learning, we're listening to what's going on, to the communities, to all of you. And today is an opportunity for you to share more of your suggestions, ideas, and thoughts on how we can be a better transportation organization moving forward. We will also be answering several questions that were already given to us previously to this meeting, but also you will have the opportunity to ask additional questions through the Ask Tony email throughout this equity discussion today. The topic of equity, again, is typically refers to racial equity, but it also includes other areas such as gender equity, elderly equity, and differently abled people equity as well. Remember, we're all learning together. There is no right or wrong answer to any of the questions. We are learning. We want your feedback so that we can be a better organization moving forward. Just a little bit of difference between equality and equity. Equality really means to provide the same or balanced. It assumes that everyone starts from the same point. Equity means to be fair or impartial. And it recognizes that not everybody starts from the same point in time and that some of us need a little extra help along the way. If you own a cell phone, which most of you do, your cell phones have the ability to increase the font size. It also has the ability to increase the volume. And that right there is a component of equity, being able to do that. So that just gives you kind of an idea of what we're talking about in equity. Today's discussion really revolves around projects. How can we be a better transportation organization when we're talking about projects, and how can we include equity within our projects? And that's through all phases of our projects, from initiation from the planning side, all the way through construction and maintenance as well, and how can we be a better organization there. Some of the things to be a better organization also is we need to look internally and within our organization and how can we improve upon our means in being a better equitable organization. Some of the things that we are currently doing to improve our recruitment, our hiring and retention process, you may have seen over the last several weeks and months that we have been advertising temporary positions when we have vacancies. That's an effort that we are trying to do, provide a fair, level playing platform for all employees to be able to apply and compete for those positions. It also allows us the opportunity to understand which employees in our department are interested in upward mobility. So it gives us that opportunity to be able to see you and see who might be the next future leaders of this organization. Externally, though, however, I think we can also do other things when it comes to equity. We can do different things when it comes to outreach with our communities, with our advocacy groups, including members from lower income communities in our project process. And so today we'll be discussing some of those issues. And again, we want to hear from you. This is a open forum. We want to hear your suggestions, your ideas, and your thoughts moving forward. And all thoughts are important. And with that, I'd like to also introduce, we have a special guest from headquarters joining us today from the Caltrans Office of Race and Equity. I'd like to introduce to you Rihanna Gordon.
Thank you, Tony and Rihanna. Thank you, Tony and Rihanna. We will begin today's conversation with a comment and a question. The questions will be answered by Dwan and Jean. The comment comes from Elizabeth Bukalich. I would like to address the problem of, for the lack of a better phrase, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It seems that there is often attention given to appease affluent communities that will be more vocal about their concerns and less attention to the lower income communities that don't usually have the time and resources to be vocal. Many times, there are communities that need the possibility more costly intervention the most. Unfortunately, I do not have a solution. It seems that the demands made by the affluent communities should be reciprocated with interventions implemented in the lower income communities. Thank you for considering this topic. And then the question comes from Muthana Amran. Is there a plan to identify a pool or list of equity-related needs that our project teams can incorporate into our planned projects in the relevant area? Duan.
Good morning. We do recognize the challenges of the low-income minority populations to voice their concerns, access representation, or their ability to participate in the various processes of our work. So we do make every effort to engage and address the community's needs. Our efforts include, environmental laws and regulations which actually require us to get public input and outreach, considering the effects not only on the natural environment and resources, but also on social, economic, and environmental justice. We also extend our effort to consult and engage with local elected officials who are more in tune with the local community's needs. And we seek participations from community organizations who are more representative and aware of the community needs as well. We address some of the needs that we consider in our projects. For example, bike pedestrian features in our project, air quality, landscaping, or construction closures and detours. Jean?
Good morning, everyone. In response to Muthana's question, is there a plan to identify a pool or list of equity-related needs? No, we don't have such a list, but I think it's a really good idea. And as Tony mentioned, we're really looking to all of you to help us to ensure that we are addressing equity in our projects. So really appreciate the suggestion. Some of the things that we are doing to address equity in planning is we will be adding, and this is actually a statewide requirement, we'll be adding a section on equity in our project initiation documents. So that's something new that we're hoping will help to address equity in our projects. We also have used equity as one of our key criterion for prioritizing bike and pedestrian improvements in our bike plan, which was released in 2018, and our soon to be released, hopefully very early next year, pedestrian plan. We also are looking at our advisory committees, our bicycle advisory committee and our pedestrian advisory committee, to look at ways we can recruit members from disadvantaged communities to sit on those committees to help advise us on bicycle and pedestrian needs in the Bay Area.
Thank you, Jean. We're going to pivot back to Rihanna to check on the audio. Rihanna? Okay, we're going to pivot back to Dewan. Dewan, go ahead.
Yes, I do want to add a little bit regarding the participation from the disadvantaged community. Certainly, under the current COVID-19 presents extra challenges to get participation from the community. But it's also provide us really an opportunity for broader participation as well, through our various online meetings and hearings. We certainly can always do more, but certainly we are adapting and to the COVID-19, which with social distancing, but we're learning. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dewan. We will now go to question 2, which will be answered by Melanie and Tony. We do address socioeconomic equity in the project delivery process in PIDs and PRs. Can you talk about the current process and any plans for changes, enhancements to the process? And this question was submitted by Vicki Havel. Melanie?
Thank you for the question. We do prepare community impact assessments as part of our project development process in the environmental phase. And that does look at whether or not our projects have a disproportionate impact on low-income or minority communities. But going beyond that, one of the things District 4 is proposing to do is a research study that would help Caltrans understand its role in institutional inequity, both historically and in the present. We have named freeways, highways, monument structures within our right-of-way that we know may have equity, racial, and representational justice issues associated with them. So this research study will help us prepare a comprehensive inventory of those facilities, as well as a context for understanding the issues of racism and equity that might be associated with those facilities. In addition to a framework, the study will also provide a protocol that we hope will help us and guide us in making decisions regarding the possible removal, renaming, or other actions we can take with regard to these facilities. And it's our hope that this will be a model for the state, not just District 4, and that it will help Caltrans act in an equitable manner going forward.
Thank you, Melanie. And as you can see, District 4, the Bay Area, we are, I think, leading the way in a lot of areas, and that's very exciting to see that. I think some of the other things that we can start thinking about as we move forward, and again, we're looking for ideas from you, but some of the things we can do is as we're developing our asset management plans, as we are developing our projects, understanding where those underserved communities, those low-income communities are, and what other features can we provide in our projects that are still within the guidelines of a SHOP project, of an HM project, of the various types of projects we deliver. There's an opportunity, as Director Toksal Mashakin, he has 5 priorities of safety, modality, innovation, efficiencies, and partnerships and engagement. And so there's a lot of opportunity for us to expand on what we're currently doing and to do more. And one example, what we just recently did on a partnership project with the Alameda County Transportation Commission, the Oakland Alameda Accessibility Project, where we had a public hearing. Melanie's group was leading that effort. We had translators on the hearing to help convey the information that was being delivered, as well as help convey questions from the community back to Caltrans and the project team. And those are small things, but those are such important things on reaching out to the community and extra steps that we can take as we move forward with our projects.
Thank you, Tony. Now we're going to move on to a question, comment, suggestion that was submitted by Sean Skeen. Dina and Melanie will answer this question. There is no comprehensive collaboration on equitable project solutions within the department without including the issue of the garbage that collects upon our right-of-way. We all recognize that this is an issue. We may have many waste stream sources to point to as primary contributors. This must be confronted with an equal or greater force, as this waste was brought to us from others, but is now ours. The collateral impacts of uncollected garbage that lies in our transportation corridors are experienced in mostly lower income areas where the residents are disenfranchised. The densely populated epicenter of industry, waste management, transfer stations, homeless, etc., create a disproportionate stream of waste onto our roadways, further burdening our efforts to manage this problem and in turn burden the businesses and residents who live nearby. What can be done? I believe we must have a multi-pronged attack that is given the support that is equal to the task. Beginning by quantifying the extent of the problem using GIS. This can be used to gauge the results of our efforts in creating a major focused campaign against littering, utilizing our programmable messaging signs, social media, and television. We can partner with CHP to post and enforce fines for littering. We can put out bins in areas most occupied for the homeless as we partner with industry and waste management support to support our campaign and efforts. Dina?
I want to thank Sean for this wonderful question and suggestion. I think Sean answered pretty much a lot of what could be done. I do agree with Sean that this is a multi-faceted problem that we need to face within the department. Yes, we are not generating the trash. However, we are responsible for maintaining the highways. And this has been a growing problem within the Bay Area. It seems to be increasing as we're also seeing a lot more people experiencing homelessness. So this is something that requires a collaborative effort among many agencies, not just from Caltrans. One of the things that we need to do is really take a look at the source of this trash and where is it coming from. We need to be working with our local partners for enforcement purposes. And I think Sean did mention that in his suggestion. It is really critical that we work with CHP, with the cities, and to ensure that they are doing their part in enforcing this. But also another component of this, and this is something that we had proposed in our work plan that we submitted to the Regional Water Board as part of our cease and desist order. One of the things that we did put in there is that we are also working on an education campaign. And I think if we look at the areas that have the heavy concentration or what we call the hot spots for litter and debris, we find out that a lot of these areas are corridors that are running through lower income areas. And it's really important to lead a campaign on educating people and better use this campaign as part of our strategy in addressing this problem. I also like the suggestion that Sean mentioned regarding the GIS. We've started some of this effort with the GIS by creating a hotspot map to show which locations seem to have the problem more in focus. And I also want to give Melanie the opportunity to maybe add to some of the ongoing efforts with the cease and desist order or anything else you want to add. So Melanie?
Thank you. Yes, as part of our efforts, we have mapped the areas within the district that are considered medium, high, or very high trash generation areas. So we do know where the problem exists. And it is a multi-prong approach. So on the one hand, we are working to prevent the trash from getting into our waterways. My water quality program manager is developing trash capture devices, and those are things we are adding to our projects to prevent the trash from getting into the waterways. In terms of actually cleaning up trash, that is, of course, a much bigger effort. We are looking at a pilot project to perform enhanced litter pickup. But that does involve our maintenance forces, and we are looking to see whether, an increase in frequency in trash pickup will in fact help with the problem. So those are just some of the things we are looking at doing.
Thank you, Melanie and Dina. All right, we'll move on to the next question, which was submitted by Ramonia Pulio. How far will we go with equity outreach projects? Will it just be TV and radio ads, or will we make it more of a feet on the ground effort, going door to door in even community events? Jean?
Thank you for the question. That's a great question, and I'm happy to say that the answer is yes, that we are already doing some of those things. I'll talk a little bit about some of the outreach that we're doing in planning, and then Melanie is going to be talking more about projects in the environmental process. But we have done quite a bit of community engagement for I'm going to use our bike and pedestrian plans that I mentioned earlier as examples, as well as our proposal for active transportation project in the city of Richmond. But in doing the outreach, we actually went out into the communities. We did pop-up, as we call them, and intercept events, where we had staff out with tables showing displays of information on the projects and plans. We went out at different times of the day to try and reach the most people. We also went to a variety of different community events, including the Richmond Juneteenth Festival, which was on a Saturday, the Bike to Work Day at Frank Ogawa Plaza in Oakland, the Niles Canyon Stroll and Roll, the East Palo Alto Community Revitalization Fair. Also went out to different transit stations to reach people there. So we're really trying to get out into the communities, get out to the people who will be impacted by our plans and projects. Another tool we've been using to get engagement from the community is focus groups that are targeted at low-income and minority communities. We've actually worked with community-based organizations to recruit members to represent their communities. So we are trying to get out to the communities and really talk to the people who are going to be impacted by our plans and projects. And we certainly hope to continue doing that and expand on our efforts in that respect. So I'll turn it over to Melanie.
Thank you. Yeah, I will just add that we are trying to go beyond our formal public input process that we do as part of our environmental documents to work more informally with the community. One of the things we had hoped to do was we had purchased a table at Oakland's Earth Day festivities this year. Unfortunately, the pandemic did not allow us to go forward with Earth Day festivities, but that is one of the things we are looking at, how we can participate more in community events.
Thank you, Jean and Melanie. So we move on. We have another question and comment. We'll start first with a comment that came from Lenka Kulik-Caro. There is a proposal to remove I-980. District 4 should be a leader and show how serious we are, not about just thinking about, but implementing equity. And then our question comes from John Yu. Removing or capping freeways is considered a way to reconnect communities, and there are a couple of potential locations, corridors in our district. What is your take on these proposals and projects? Jean?
Yeah, thank you for the comment and question. There is a proposal to look at removing I-980 and replacing with a boulevard. With support from Tony and Dina, we will be applying for a state planning and research grant to get some consultant support to actually lead a study, working, of course, very closely with the city of Oakland and the community as well as BART, because BART has a proposal for a second crossing that involves aligning the system through that corridor. So we've already had some discussions with BART. We have had previous discussions with the City of Oakland. So we hope to do a study that looks at all different options, not just removing 980, that would obviously be one of the alternatives, but looking at potentially capping the freeway or providing better connections that may be wider overcrossings that might include a park strip, for example. I think there's lots of different ideas that we would want to explore as part of this study. So we look forward to hopefully being successful in getting some dollars for consultant support so we can initiate that study.
Yes, I would like to add to Jean's response, and the alternatives that Jean is talking about are great alternatives, but I also would like us to think a little bit more about what other options we have as low-hanging fruit, maybe in addressing some of these concerns. And some of these might be something as simple as establishing connections underneath the freeways in certain areas, where we can reconnect communities, maybe looking at ways we can better light up the passage under the freeway and allow for pedestrians and bicyclists to move freely and safely within these areas. Or looking at sponsoring and encouraging some of the artwork that allows the local residents to express themselves and also add value to the communities that we are serving in these areas. So there are other options that in the meanwhile, while we're looking at the studies and what could be done long term, there are other options that could be looked into as short-term options that we can implement almost immediately and for very low costs. So thank you.
Thank you, Dina. And redeveloping homes or public transit corridors, especially regarding speed necessary to reduce climate change. And we'll pivot to Tony to answer this question.
Thank you. Obviously, this is staying in the same theme as the previous questions. One of our goals is really reconnecting communities and trying to undo some of the past transportation decisions made. And I think this district here in the Bay Area has actually been a leader for many years prior to today. If we go back to the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake and the collapse of the Cypress Freeway, and how this district really worked with the West Oakland community to create the Mandela Parkway to realign where that connection would be for the freeway system. And there was a lot of engagement, a lot of involvement with the community there. As Jean mentioned as well, that we are looking at Interstate 980, and I'm excited that we are going to take a leadership role in a planning study to look at evaluating options for that corridor of 980. We're working in collaboration with the City of Oakland, with the Bay Area Rapid Transit District as well, and looking at various options, maybe turning it into a boulevard, maybe some other options. I think there's also a lot of other areas we can look at throughout the Bay Area on our freeway system on how do we reconnect those communities by either capping sections of our submerged or depressed freeways and providing parks, trails, bikeways above the freeway system. As we know, the freeway system is an important component to the economic vitality of our state, as well as the nation. We're the 5th largest economy in the world, and we will continue to maintain and operate the state freeway system, the highway system. But there's a lot of opportunities we have that lie ahead of us where we can actually reconnect the communities, undo some of those past transportation decisions, provide an active lifestyle for the citizens who live adjacent to our freeways, improve their health, and build a better transportation system for everyone, all of us in California.
Thank you, Tony. So now we have a question that was submitted by Frederick Shermer. Given the state highway system is creating obstacles to movement for pedestrians and bicyclists, do we work with the minimum standards for access crossings and focus particularly on underserved communities? We will shift to Jean and Duan to answer this question. Jean?
So thanks for the question, Frederick. As I mentioned previously, our bicycle and soon-to-be released pedestrian plans uses equity as a key criterion for prioritizing projects. Safety is another key criterion for prioritizing projects as well. You know, we are certainly looking at those projects that cross our system in terms of access and safety. And I'm pleased to report that 30% of our location-based needs identified in our bike plan are in the project development process. Now, that doesn't mean that they're funded, but that does mean that they are somewhere between planning and construction. So there really has been a major change in focus in the department, really prioritizing and looking at complete streets as part of our system. And we will be getting actual performance targets for complete streets improvement as part of asset management, and basically what that means is that we will be able to address some needs for bike and pedestrians as standalone projects. As right now, unless they're safety projects, they really have to be part of existing shop projects. So I think in the future we'll have much more flexibility in being able to address some of these priority needs. Duan?
Thank you, Jean. You know, I would add that in the District 4 Bay Area, we have roughly about 1,500 center lane miles, and over half are actually conventional highway. So what that means is there are a lot of opportunities for us to address the needs of bike and pedestrian to improve access, connectivity, and safety for bike and pedestrian. We obviously in the SHOP program, aside from the 4 core assets of pavement, bridge, culverts, and TMS, there's a renewed emphasis on multi-assets, building, including assets such as bike and ped, ADA, and our efforts in the district also, I think this past year we have dedicated a complete street manager. And I know many of you worked on projects that have bike and pet features, whether it's throughout the district, in San Francisco, Oakland here, Alameda, Napa, Santa Clara, and I know this week many of you are working on to try to fund a 2-lane bike lane extension on Route 84. So we are only successful with your participation and efforts in delivering these projects. Now, there's always a need for more money, and so we are always pursuing new funding opportunities and elevating priorities of bike and pedestrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Duan. And Jean. All right, we'll move on next to a comment that was received by Raquel Johnson. Policies and procedures are important in equity projects. However, it's the people applying the processes that are key too. I would suggest roundtable talks from people within different divisions and levels of accountability for deeper level conversations. Thank you, Raquel. Dina, would you like to respond? Duan?
Yes, that's actually a great comment, and I can't agree with you more, Raquel. I think that's the bottom line, is how do we think of equity, and how are we mindful of equity in everything that we are doing? We've started by establishing an equity task force in the Bay Area, and we are in the process of putting this task force together. But the idea here is to ensure that it is diverse, it's inclusive, that it does have members from different divisions so that everybody can weigh in. But the bottom line is going to be how are we looking at equity as individuals in our day-to-day work? The way I think of it, for example, is if I am working on a project in my neighborhood, what can I do to improve equity? Can I maybe close a small gap for a bike lane, or maybe can I make it more pedestrian friendly, where I'm allowing some of the disadvantaged communities to have the means of transportation and mobility that they need to get around. So just drilling down to these details and looking for opportunities in everything that we're doing is going to be something that we are going to have to do at all staff level, not just in terms of our policies and procedures. Great comment, Raquel. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Dina. And thank you, Raquel, for the question. You know, we are a public service organization, and people is our most valuable asset. All of you are our most valuable assets, as Raquel says, because it's people that get things done. And in the Bay Area, diversity is our strength. We are not only diverse in terms of geography, environmental, culturally, but we're diverse in our workforce, representative of the people that we serve. So diversity, allow us to have creativity, new ideas, come up with solutions and improvement that context sensitive, that not only meet the purpose and need of the project, but are also compatible with the community, whether it's equity or bike ped. So diversity is really our strength and will help us in terms of the equity focus that we have currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina and Dewan. And now we have a question that was received from Chaganda Davis. How do we minimize the effects of air quality and environmental impacts with our future projects in low-income communities? Also, what partnerships are in place to assist with this effort? We will pivot to Melanie for the response, and then Dewan.
Thank you. Yes, with regard to air quality, Assembly Bill 617, which passed in 2017, requires the adoption and implementation of emissions reduction plans for communities with disproportionate impacts from air pollution. So within the framework of AB 617, the department is working statewide to reduce exposure to air pollution in the most impacted communities. Here in District 4, we are working closely with the West Oakland community on the development of a plan with multiple strategies. One of my staff in air quality is participating on a steering committee with other members of the community and representatives of local government to come up with these strategies and to implement these strategies in order to advance the cause of equity. In addition, the City of Oakland has appointed a director of equity who trains city staff to look at projects through an equity lens. And my staff is also working closely with that group to try to bring various functions within the department into the conversation so that we can look at Caltrans' own parcels in Oakland and how these locations can be better served. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Basically, I just do whatever you tell me to do, Melanie, in terms of environmental. But on air quality, there are requirements on project, in terms of reducing air quality. Really, it's reducing vehicle mile travel, VMT. And so there are projects that we are going through very carefully to make sure that it meets the requirement so that project reduce VMT. And if there is an adverse impact, then there's appropriate mitigations. And we work closely with our transportation partner, local sponsors or community to provide the adequate mitigations for those projects. It is a new process, so we're learning as we go right now. We're actually in a transition period right now in terms of the new requirement. So we'll continue to learn and adapt with the new requirement. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, Melanie and Dwan. I just wanted to also add, this is a very important question that Chakanda brought up, and it is so vital to what we're doing in Caltrans moving forward. We all realize that it's getting more and more difficult to continue to expand the highway system, and we really need to have a critical mass shift from single occupant drivers into other modes of travel, whether that's transit, whether that's riding on rail, train service, whether that's other modes like walking or cycling. And there are so many individuals here in the Bay Area, in our communities, in our underserved communities, that are extremely dependent upon walking, cycling, or transit. And as we move forward, as we're looking at our projects, we need to understand that and ensure that we are addressing those components, enhancing the safety for these most vulnerable users of our system to ensure that they have accessibility and connectivity to jobs, to healthcare, to employment opportunities. And so this is really a core moving forward. You heard some terms of VMT, vehicle miles traveled, GHG, which is greenhouse gases, trying to reduce both of those components as we move forward. And so we are going to be working with all of you, our teams, with our local transportation partners, with all stakeholders throughout the Bay Area and the state to find ways on how we reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce the vehicle miles traveled in California. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie, Dwan, and Tony. Let's move on to the next question we received from Inderpreet Singh. This is a great initiative. Kudos to the exec team for doing this. My question is regarding the equity component on express lanes. We have several express lanes that are currently operating in the Bay Area, and there are quite a few more in the pipeline as a number of express lane projects are currently under development. Given that all of these lanes are paid toll lanes and can get quite expensive during peak hours, it seems that they do inadvertently impact the lower income groups more than others. So, I would like to know, how does this impact our mission to provide an equitable transportation system? And we will shift to Dwan to answer this question, please.
Thank you, Inderpreet, for the question. You know, our Bay Area express lanes are on various corridors are actually operated by different operator, MTC, VTA, the newly formed Joint Powers Authority in San Mateo County, and you know they all have different requirements. For the San Mateo one, there is an equity element in there, and currently we are actually negotiating the cooperative agreement regarding that, and that's one of the feature where there would be a discount in terms of the use of the lane, and it's in development right now. I'm sure on the other operator as they go forward and switching over to I think 3+, or operating almost all day. That may be in consideration with MTC, but I know for sure in San Mateo or the 101 corridor, and as we extend that corridor up into San Francisco, that element will be there. There are also discussions regarding other toll lanes in the Bay Area, Route 37 being one, that also would consider adding an equity element in there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwan. All right, we've got another comment from Ramonia Pulio. A statement is great, but to the masses, actions speak greater than words. Tony, would you like to comment on that comment?
Certainly. Thank you, Mika, and thank you, Ramonia, for that question. That's an excellent question. Put your money where your mouth is basically what we're saying, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Definitely, I think where an area that we may be lacking here in our district is really reaching out to our maintenance team out in the field. We have a large group of employees, as Dwan mentioned earlier. All of our employees are our most valuable resource, and so it really behooves us to reach out to you at all levels of maintenance, but also to listen to you and understand your issues and how we can implement some equity changes within the field ranks as well. And you have my commitment, and I know you have the commitment of our Chief Deputy Director, Dina El Tawansi, to work together in partnership to help find solutions to some of these equity issues. So I think moving forward, especially after this meeting, we are going to work with the Deputy Director for Maintenance in our district to start putting together some workshops, some focus groups in maintenance, so that we can start having these direct conversations with you out in the field in your maintenance stations, in your regional yards, and start understanding and listening to all of you. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Tony. And we have a question from Rochelle Marique. One way to create equity is to have a process for active public involvement. The EIR process has requirements to have the public comment on the process. Perhaps a process to involve the public and learn needs would be a way of creating equity. Melanie, what do you think?
Thank you. Yes, I totally agree. We are working more closely with our public affairs group to find ways to better reach out to communities. I think this is an area of improvement, and I think, as a result of the pandemic, we've had to learn how to do remote public outreach through websites and so forth, and so we've learned a lot from that process. And I think hopefully going forward, the more we can get out in the community and get informal community input, the better we are able to develop our projects with their needs in mind. It definitely builds trust when we're out there in less formal settings, and I'm very hopeful for the future that we will be able to do that.
Thank you, Melanie. And another question here from Christopher states, why are we not pushing back harder on FHWA on the unsheltered project issue? This seems to be at the forefront of the issue. Tony, would you like to respond to that one?
Absolutely. Thank you, Christopher, for that question. I will say, and I know it may not be seen readily or readily seen, that we are pushing back. We are working very closely with the Federal Highway Administration and the U.S. Department of Transportation. I'd say, first of all, I'm so proud of what this district has done in the space of working with people experiencing homelessness. And we have a task force that is dedicated to working with these individuals. We have been partnering with several of our cities around the Bay Area, obviously our 3 largest cities, and a lot of smaller cities as well, to find solutions, to find opportunities that we can help provide these individuals some transitional housing, some services to get them back on their feet and back into permanent housing. And we have been very successful here in Oakland. We have been successful in San Francisco, and we are working on some programs in San Jose as well, and looking to be extremely successful there. I think as I said, it's not readily seen what's happening because things are happening behind the scene, but I know our director, Tokso Mashakin, has been extremely supportive of the work that we are doing here in the Bay Area, and he has been personally having conversations with folks from the U.S. DOT and Federal Highway Administration in Washington, D.C. to help move these projects along. And it appears that possibly in the near future, we may have some additional clarity to move forward, at least with several of our projects that we've already established here and have the approval to move forward. So I am happy that there is movement, and I hope there will continue to be more movement moving forward. But great question, great comment, and again, everything that we are doing here in the Bay Area is really leading the way statewide. Other districts, other areas are looking at our partnerships that we have in place and trying to implement those as well. So thank you for that comment, Christopher.
Thank you again, Tony. So now we are going to shift to some of the questions that we had for Rihanna, and since we're kind of going to be on the fly a little bit here, so deputies, please let us know who would like to respond to these questions. We'll start with the question from Eddie Kim. Do you plan to develop different equity factors and past projects and future projects into GIS map to analyze disparity in a geographical manner? Dina, would you like to respond to that first?
Sure. Thank you for the question, and it is a great one. Utilizing GIS map is going to be really an important factor of that. As a matter of fact, we are looking into how we can utilize that, for example, in our maintenance practices. We know that we've seen other districts develop these GIS map to take a look at our maintenance activities and see where are we focusing some of these maintenance activities, where are we spending a lot of our resources, are we actually spending them in an equitable manner, or do we spend them in communities that don't really have the most urgent need for them? So I think we are going down this road, and I think we need to do a lot more on GIS because it helps us visually see the areas that need the most attention. So that's definitely a great question or comment, and I would like to turn it over to anybody else that would like to add to this.
Would you like to add something, Duan?
Yes, thank you. You know, we have the infrastructure, we have the GIS set up. I think what we need to do is build up the inventory of what we have right now in terms of facilities, and then overlay with areas that are considered disadvantaged community. And then we can look at the project that are planned or in our 10-year SHOP plan, or projects that are from our local partner as well, to really have a comprehensive GIS inventory and plan projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Duan. All right, continuing on with our other questions, we're going to direct this one to Jean. The question comes from Kimberly White. In order to represent all of our Bay Area communities, I think that public engagement is critical. How can we create more active engagement with our communities and truly include them in our decision-making processes for projects?
I think that's a great question, and I think we've touched on some of what we are doing, are starting to do, and would like to do more of, and that really is getting out into the communities to really talk to the people who are impacted by the project. We've been very fortunate in planning that we have a public engagement contract where we've been able to use consultant services to really help us to identify different groups that we should reach out to, actually provide financial incentives, which is really a key to either the community-based organizations to help us recruit members, for example, on focus groups, even provide things like refreshments at community meetings. Those tools are really very valuable in trying to reach the people who are really going to be impacted by the project. And so it's always difficult at Caltrans. We don't have a little fund that we can just pull from to pay people to participate or provide refreshments. And I think that's something maybe we need to look into more if there's a vehicle, either through more consultant contracts or some other vehicle, to be able to have some funds to help us do this outreach. But I think it really comes down to getting into the communities where people are living and where these projects are taking place, so that we can ensure that we're getting input from everyone, and not just people who are able to attend meetings on a project that may not be at a time that they're able to attend. People working a number of jobs aren't able to necessarily come to a meeting at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I think, as Dwan mentioned, the pandemic has actually given us some tools that we haven't used in terms of virtual meetings that have actually allowed people who wouldn't normally be able to attend an in-person meeting to participate in discussions about projects. So I think going forward, we need to have a mix of, virtual and in-person engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And we have another question from Chakonda Davis, and we would like to pivot to Tony to answer this one to start the discussion. What systems, projects, or processes are in place to involve the underrepresented communities?
That's again, these are great questions that we're receiving today, and I appreciate this question, Chakonda. It's been mentioned up here, I think, by several of the deputies that we have certain processes already in place. We're doing a lot of outreach. We're getting out to the communities. We're having pop-ups. We're doing virtual meetings. We're having translators, but we can always do more. And I think it's really one of the areas that I'm so grateful and so excited about that we're starting up now. As Deputy Director Jean Finney mentioned, we are now including community members of disadvantaged communities as members of our Bicycle Advisory Committee and Pedestrian Advisory Committees. And so the more that we can outreach, the more that we can speak to these individuals, these groups, these neighborhoods, and involve them in our projects will just make us a better organization moving forward. I think also looking at our internal organization as well. As Caltrans here in the Bay Area, we're a very diverse organization. That's what makes us so great. And I think also moving forward, as we move forward, how do we continue to ensure that people that we serve in these communities around the Bay Area are also people who work for us here in Caltrans, and how can we ensure that we represent the communities we serve? And that will be a huge point moving forward on ensuring equity, because if we have members of the community working for Caltrans, they know the specific issues, they know the impacts, and they can help us solve some of those issues moving forward. So I think there's a lot of great ideas that I'm hearing from many different people. Excited to try some of these ideas out, excited to hear more of your ideas, and great comments and questions, Chakonda. Thank you.
Thanks again, Tony. Now we're going to shift to some questions that came into the Ask Tony email. So this will be for all panelists. We'll start with a question from Wahida Rashid. Are we reaching out to our partners and letting them know Caltrans is taking a strong stance on equity? Most of our projects and partnership projects are partnership projects, and we are all in it together.
I'll take a stab, or at least start on that one. I think the answer is yes. We are working closely with our partners and making them aware of our goals in terms of equity. And I think that it's not just the department that is trying to tackle the issue of ensuring equity in transportation projects. Our partners are doing the same, but we have been having those conversations, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Jean. Tony?
Yes, thank you. So the department right now, on a statewide basis, is working on a strategic management plan. And in that, we're developing a brand new mission, vision, goals. And within the mission, vision, and goals, we are embedding equity throughout the entire plan. And as we roll this plan out on a statewide basis, I know Director Tokso has been meeting with many of the larger metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, throughout the state, sharing some of these. And we have many of these staff and directors from these MPOs and our TAs as providing input into our strategic management plan. They are aware that we are moving in this direction. I am also sharing, along with the deputies here, we are sharing with our partners as we go out and meet with them on a regular basis where we're moving on equity. And what I'm really excited to, and I say that a lot, but the Bay Area is an exciting place to work. Our partners, our transportation partners, many of our stakeholders, they are already including equity in the way they deliver projects, in the way they want to deliver projects in the future. So it's not, from our standpoint, difficult to convince them. They're already convinced. And so working together, moving forward in the future, I think is going to be an excellent opportunity for us to include, to weave equity through our projects, our partnership projects, and even the projects that our local partners do on their own.
Great. Thank you, Tony. All right, we've got another question from the Ask Tony email. It comes from Deborah Nelson. What level of quantifiable intentionality on recruiting people of color or hiring minority-owned consultants who have lived or shared experience has occurred or close to implementation to work in environmental, transportation planning, and the PPM divisions? Specifically, can you share? So hopefully the three deputies can answer that question as it relates to their specific area. And I can repeat the question again if that would be helpful. What level of quantifiable intentionality on recruiting people of color or hiring minority-owned consultants who have lived or shared experience has occurred or close to implementation to work with the division, with your division? Dina. All right, we'll shift to Dina first. Thank you, Dina.
All right, thank you. I'll take a stab at this, and then maybe the deputies can add more to it. One of the things that we really need to address when we're looking at equity is our practices when it comes to recruitment and hiring. And this is a great question, Shikanda, because this is going to require all of us to put our heads together and see how we can do better outreach within the communities that are here serving the Bay Area. You know, your question is in particularly important when we look at the Bay Area retention for some classification, for example. We are seeing that certain classifications are struggling to come on board and stay in the Bay Area due to the high cost of living. So having these recruitment efforts in certain disadvantaged communities is going to be really beneficial for us and for these communities. To bring on board members of these communities and have them serve as part of our team will definitely be something that we will need to put more emphasis and focus on. One of the things that jumps to my mind right away when we're talking about this is the Small Business Enterprise Council that we have and reaching to small businesses. I think in our previous conversation I did mention this, but I'll re-mention it again. One of the opportunities that we have is to work closely with certain minority groups. We're seeing that even though we're meeting our DBE goals as a district and statewide, there is an opportunity to do more when it comes to certain groups such as African Americans and Hispanic. So our district will have to focus some effort into reaching out for these groups, getting them certified, so that they can be more equipped to compete for some of our projects for the small businesses. So these are some of the efforts that I'm thinking off the top of my head that we can start focusing our attention to and to continue working with the Small Business Council on that.
I just want to add, I think it's really important that we look at recruiting not just at colleges, but actually going to high schools in disadvantaged areas and really exposing students to planning, to engineering, to some of the other disciplines we have at Caltrans, because if you don't have interest or you're not even aware of things like engineering, we're going to see, less people from disadvantaged communities actually focus on those studies when they're in college. And we do, I think, make an effort to get a good balanced pool of candidates. But if the candidates aren't there to begin with, then we have a big issue. So I think we need to really pay attention to getting out into our communities and exposing students at the pre-college level in the different fields and just about Caltrans in general and career opportunities they might have as they are looking for work.
Thank you, Jean. Melanie?
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest here and say that I don't think we have very good minority representation in the environmental planning classifications. But one of the things I'm excited about is the District 4 Strategic Action Plan that Tony mentioned we're developing. One of our priorities, the third priority, is to develop teams in a way that focuses on things like recruitment. And I'm hopeful that group of employees will look at this issue and find ways we can recruit minorities to come work at Caltrans.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your responses. And since technology is not going to agree with us and allow Ariana to continue to give her comments, she sent us a text, so another way of technology to send a message. She just wants me to say, or to let you know, that she is so happy that District 4 is engaging in these conversations. They are critical for moving the department forward. We do not have all of the answers, and it will take time to work through many of the considerations necessary, but commitment and open dialogue will help us get there. Headquarters is working on developing an equity index and GIS overlay that can help with project selection and prioritization. The Office of Race and Equity is looking forward to collaborating, if I could say the word, collaborating, and co-creating equity strategies with the districts. Yay for District 4 for being the leader in this space. So prior to our closing remarks from Director Tavares, we would like to share 2 additional comments that were received in the Ask Tony email. The first comes from Leslie Jorge Tirret. I speak Spanish, and I have been contacted to assist as a translator in some Caltrans projects, and just wanted to comment that it is wonderful to have a list in place to help others as well as with all others with other languages. And then another comment from Frederick Shermer. I think Caltrans District 4 is doing a lot for establishing an equitable workplace. It can always be improved. My compliments for what has been achieved. Tony?
Well, those are wonderful comments. Thank you, Mika. First, I want to thank my fellow deputies here who are joining me today. They have done a wonderful job of being open. They're so committed and passionate about this subject, and I'm so happy that they've agreed to join Dina and myself here on the stage. It's not an easy thing to do, and they put themselves out there. I want to thank all of you for joining us, and I know we've had some technical difficulties along the way, and I appreciate you standing and staying there with us and being part of this discussion and sharing your questions and comments and feedback with us as well. We have a whole team that has helped put this together, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank them as well. I see Kim Jenkins from her entire IT group. Thank you so much for helping us. Mika, Andrea, Cheryl, our entire audiovisual team, thank you so much for helping us put this together. It takes a team, it takes a village really to make something like this happen, and we have such a committed team here in the Bay Area, and I'm so happy that we're all so committed and passionate about this subject. Thank you. As we move forward, again, equity is a rather new topic. It's rather new to all of us. We're learning, I'm learning, all of us are learning together. We're trying to do the right thing moving forward. We need all of you. We need your help to help guide us as well. So this isn't an instance where your district director or your executive team has all the answers. We don't have all the answers. So we are looking to all of you for suggestions. And as I said at the beginning of my comments, there are no right or wrong answers. And so we are open to all suggestions, ideas on how we can move forward, how we can create a more equitable transportation system for all California, but for all the Bay Area residents and those who work and live here. So with that, again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your comments, and stay safe and healthy out there. Thank you so much.